Hey everyone, Walsh here from Thin Line Defense, and today I'm bringing you a review of the Vortex Razor UH-1 Huey Red Dot. Now before we get to that though, as always, I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. A lot of these products aren't actually given to us and we actually have to buy a good bit of them or have to be loaned to us for review. So thank you for supporting the channel so we can make these reviews possible. I also want to thank everybody that likes, comments, and subscribes. We started as just this little tiny channel and the small amount that you do for us has made us grow to this point where now we have all this cool gear to look at. So thank you so much. So there's some really cool features of the Vortex UH-1 Huey, namely the reticle. Like if you know how to use it and know your different reference points, and you know how to use some very particular zeros, you can then engage targets at pretty much any range by just using 2 reference points. I'll show you how to do that. It's really pretty cool. And then the housing that it actually comes with is so robust that it's going to survive pretty much anything. So tell you what though, let's start by unboxing it and let me show you everything that comes with it. Alright, so here's the box for our Vortex Optic AMG UH-1. And you can see here there's the reticle design and some of the different features that are on the outside of the box. Let's see what comes inside of it though. We have our foamy piece. We have all of our instructions. We'll go through all this like normal. Oh, okay, here. And what do we have here? Look at this fancy lens cloth holder. We'll just throw it to the side. And then here we have the actual optic. Wow. Look at this. Look at this housing this thing comes with. This thing's pretty beefy for sure, but the construction is top notch. You can see how the buttons are easy to press. And then you have your windage adjustments on the side. This is a really well designed optic. You can see it's really well put together. I really like that black finish it has. Here you can see you press the buttons up and down. Just press one of the buttons in order to turn it on, and you can see the actual reticle here. And then just press up to obviously to brighten it, the minus to dim it, and then you can press both buttons together and then it turns the optic off. Alright, and like I said, here we have our windage. So here I'll grab a screwdriver and we'll actually test it to see how tactile the clicks are. As you can tell, there's a pretty clean sound in it. I don't know why one is a lot easier than the other to turn, which is a little weird. That's a little concerning. And then you actually have your QD, so that's your adjustment for the QD. So the lever's pretty neat where it doesn't actually open if you just pull on it. You have to push down the release and then you can flick it open. So you don't have to worry about it just like coming off the rifle. And as I said, you can adjust it here if the tightness is a little bit off, if the lever won't close on wherever you're trying to put it on. And then we have the battery compartment. This is a little annoying because this uses a CR123 battery, which isn't horrible. It's just not the standard 2032. So just be aware of that. You're going to need to stock up on yet another type of battery. And then it has a USB charger. If instead you use a rechargeable battery, you can recharge it via a USB cord here if for some reason you just love rechargeable batteries. And one of the things that makes this so special is it uses an enclosed optic. So you can see both the front and the rear are actually enclosed. So you don't have to worry about debris getting inside of there and clogging up the optic. But let's take a look at the instructions. Let's see what came in here. So first we have some of the features that we just talked about, all the different ports and things I showed you. Showed you different battery caps, some of the features of the actual outside of it. That's cool. How to turn it on. We talked about that already. So it does have an auto shut off after 14 hours, so that's interesting. You can turn it off if you want. How to do windage and elevation. So this does show you it does a half MOA for each adjustment. So be aware that's a ½ inch. So every adjustment you're going to make at 100 yards is going to be a ½ inch adjustment. Then it shows you how to use the quick release mount like we just talked about. We'll install it and I'll actually show you how to do it and if we need to make any adjustments or not. It's really easy. Then we have our reticle. We'll go into detail like always on the reticle. This kind of shows you some of the different cool trajectories and zeros. We'll talk about this a bunch too. And then the actual battery, that's CR123. How to change a battery, which I already showed you. Maintenance, just wipe it off. It's really all you got to do. It's pretty much maintenance free. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, and they're fantastic warranty. I do love Vortex's warranty. But that's about it. So now that we all got it all unboxed, there's one big advantage that you have from a red dot over like a LPVO or something, and that's weight. And I will warn you that the Vortex Razor UH-1 is definitely hefty. Okay, let's see the weight of this thing. 12.8 ounces. And then look, the magnifier is then almost 11. What is a normal red dot? Here's a Romeo 5. A whopping 5.4, and then my Holosun 503G is 4.8. So yeah, be aware, it's got some serious weight at 12.8. So then with the Vortex Razor UH-1 and a magnifier, you're at almost 23 ounces. It's not quite as bad though because the magnifier is easily removable, so it won't have that weight all the time, but just be aware that it's similar in weight to like a primary arms 1/6 second focal plane, so you may not gain as much advantage with this as you may think over a LPVO. But tell you what, let's go and install it all, and then I'm going to show you some of the cool things you can do with this reticle. It's really neat. Alright, so let's get started. First thing, let's grab some tools, and we'll go ahead and remove this Sig Romeo 5 that I had on here. This is a good optic. It's just simple and budget, but let's take things up a notch. What do you say? Just take this little guy off here, and we'll just release that switch, place it on, and then we can just close the... We'll just close... Okay, well, nope. Okay, so easy enough. We'll just go ahead and make a small adjustment. So loosen up the quick release lever, just a couple clicks here, reinstall, and there we go. Okay. Good to go. We got everything all installed. Now let me show you the intricacies of this reticle, and I can weaponize you to use this extremely effectively if you know how to use your zeros right. Okay, so this optic has three really cool things. It has the central ring, which allows you to identify targets quickly. Then it has the lower diamond that actually adjusts for your offset. So if you have a target within 10 yards, you would then aim with the lower diamond. And then we can use our center red dot for anything longer than 10 yards. So with the three of these items together, with the circle, the triangle, and the dot, we can engage multiple targets quickly at various distances. This thing is really pretty slick. So now you have your two different reference points. Now if you know a little bit about zero, you can make some magic happen. So you have your small triangle for anybody within 10 yards. And those of you out there may think like, okay, cool, well, I'm going to zero that center red dot out to 100 yards. That's not what you're going to want to do. If you actually use a 50-yard zero, the bullet then breaks the plane at two different locations. It'll break the plane at 50 yards and at 200 yards, effectively making your zero both 50 and 200. But that also means that all the spaces in between 50 and 200 are almost the same. They only waver by a couple inches. Now, if you need to shoot a quarter out of somebody's hand, that may not be effective, but for tactical accuracy, it's going to be perfectly fine. And even then, as the bullet travels further to 300 yards, it actually doesn't have that much of a bullet drop where you're still going to land within the A or the B zone on a target. And then even if you go out to 400 yards or 350 yards, you can still engage at that distance just by making very small adjustments to raise your reticle. So then suddenly you have a red dot and a triangle that is going to enable you to engage targets from 0 to 400 yards without a bunch of weird measurements and calculations. Just aim with the triangle for somebody up close and aim with the dot from somebody far away. If they're super far, maybe aim towards their shoulders, otherwise center mass. It makes for a reticle that is extremely easy to use if you zero it right and use it correctly. Now, I mentioned the magnifier earlier and the added weight. I really do recommend it on this setup. Using the magnifier, it actually is really easy to see the reticle, and not only that, but you gain increased target identification. So you definitely don't want to engage a target you can't see, and the magnifier lets that reticle just blow up right in front of you so you can see clearly. And then because of the zeros that we set, now we know that we can engage a target anywhere between 50 and 350 yards and still strike within that A zone. So let's throw this magnifier on. As you can see, if you leave enough rail room, it'll fit just fine. And similar to the optic, it also has a quick release, so you can easily remove it if you need to. One thing that is annoying is you can't reach both buttons, so where you have it placed, you can't reach the minus button. But as I said, you can easily just use the quick release and then adjust it whatever you need to, and then you can just throw the magnifier back on. This is something you could easily just put in your pocket or have with you and not keep on the rifle at all times. And then you can still do your pop-ups if you need to, if your optic were to die in any situation. One thing I do want to note though, if you do install it this way, you have to remove this small tool that's on the front of the magnifier. This is just to adjust it, so you really don't need this. Just be aware you have to take it off or it runs into the front of the optic and it doesn't fit right. So along with doing some very specific adjustments to make the magnifier work, there's also a couple nuances I want you to be aware of with this optic. Let's get into those and I'll show you what kind of drives me crazy with this particular design. So I realize this is the Gen 1, I think they fixed this on the Gen 2, but you can adjust this with just your fingers. I'm always worried about this getting adjusted accidentally by rubbing against my gear. Also, the way the mount sits, I know this is left-handed, but it runs into the actual dust cover. This didn't actually cause any sort of issues when I went out to shoot it, and it is on the left side, so maybe that's the problem, but I did look on the right side, and the mount still does stick out a good bit, so I'd be curious if you still have the same problem. Alright, let's go to the old backyard training range and let's try out this optic. I want to start with looking at the brightness and kind of see how bright and how dim it can get between all the settings. So let me show you all the way dim and then I'll take it all the way bright. This thing has like 15 different levels of brightness, so it goes from pretty low to like very ridiculously bright. Alright, so let's go ahead and run it through the course in the backyard. I have to say, transitioning between targets was super easy. The big circle makes it so easy to identify targets, and then you have the red dot in the center. And then like we talked about, we made it so easy where if we have a target that's within 10 yards, we can just use that small bottom triangle. And it's so easy to transition between targets because the reticle itself is so large that it's hard to miss your actual target. It's easy to just move from target to target without missing a beat. I've found this reticle and this brightness to be absolutely awesome. I love it. I also love the little triangle chevron because then I know that I have to adjust for my offset and that triangle adjusts for it, so I'm not going to be shooting way too high over my target, particularly if I'm engaging something at close range. And then we flip over the magnifier and we just take things up a level. It just takes that reticle and just blooms it out in front of you, and the reticle is so clean and crisp that you don't really lose any edges. There's no real blurring or anything. It doesn't turn into a smudge at all. It just transforms that whole reticle larger and you can zoom in on your target. Again, I found it easier to have target acquisition and to see exactly where I was aiming at. If I was taking that 350 yard shot, I would definitely want to use that magnifier to make sure I had the proper shot placement. Alright, enough playing around in the backyard. Let's go ahead to the range and check this out. I will warn you, I have to mount the GoPro in a pretty weird way where I actually can't see through the optic at all, and I have to look through the GoPro. So I don't know how fast I'm going to be. So I can't see anything with the GoPro in the way, but let's give it a whirl anyway. You can see what I see at least. Oh, I can't see anything. Well, that didn't work. At least with the GoPro you get an idea for the reticle. Okay, so that didn't work out quite as planned. So let's mount the GoPro on my head and let's just do it live and you can see me run through the course. That was really fast. Let's roll the second clip. What are you talking about? What's hyperspeed mode? So that kind of stinks. Some of the footage got ruined. I was apparently running it a little too fast. Let's go to the backyard. Let's run it some more. After doing quite a bit of transitions with this thing, both live, dry, and airsoft, I have to say this reticle is extremely fast and I'm loving it. Let's do a few more. And if you're ever wondering if airsoft is similar to live fire, I have to say it's almost exactly the same. I can barely tell the difference. Those of you out there on internet land are going to tell you, no, they're totally different. I've ran this course with all of it. It's the same. Use airsoft, save yourself some money, learn the techniques, and then see if it translates over to live fire. All right, let's do one more dramatic run with some slow-mo and dramatic music. Alright, so before the snow gets to be too much, let's go over the pros, cons, and if I recommend it. So the first one is the pros. This reticle is pretty much bomb-proof. So if you need to go to some crazy situation, you need to make sure your reticle will never fail you, this is an absolutely great option. I could probably run this thing over with a tank and it would be fine. I love the reticle. Because the way the reticle is designed and the zero that we talked about, you can actually engage targets using the small triangle if they're close, or use your red dot for whatever you have it zeroed to. So we can engage targets at distance, and the variation between where it's going to land, you're not going to be the most accurate and be shooting quarters out of someone's hand, but you're going to have tactical accuracy and still land within the A zone and still strike your target, which is still going to be effective. So using just this red dot and a magnifier, you can engage targets then from 0 to 350 yards, which is absolutely awesome, just using 2 different points of reference. That makes the reticle so easy, and compared to other LPVOs where you gotta track all this stuff and all these crazy reticles and do all these cool things, it just gets really complicated. This is just simple and easy to use. Okay, let's get into cons, and a bunch of you internet warriors are gonna get angry because this is actually a fairly popular optic between you all. First one is weight. It weighs a ton. You're almost getting into LPVO territory. So why would you run a red dot to lose weight if your red dot weighs as much as the LPVO? You lose out on so much and you just gain a bunch of weight. Another con is it uses a non-standard battery. And I say non-standard because most red dots use 2032 batteries or some close variant of that. And this type of battery is usually seen in like a flashlight or some other equipment. I have some, and they're harder to get a hold of, they're harder to find, and they're definitely more expensive, so I consider that a con. The last con is definitely the price. This thing is extremely pricey. Usually I tell people to go for red dots because it's more of a budget option. They can get much more bang for the buck. But you can't do that with the Vortex UH-1 Huey. It's extremely expensive. I think this one costs $499, and I think that's usually on sale. That's a deal. Now, it does come with its own QD mount, and a QD mount will probably cost you anywhere from $100 to $150. So you're still looking at an optic then that would be like $350 in that range. So it's not totally crazy, but the price is a bit of a pill to swallow, particularly when now you're still talking about some higher end LPVOs at that range of price. I mean, at $600, $500-$600, there's some really nice LPVOs you can get into. So then it comes down to, do I recommend it? It's really situational. If you're out here in like the snow or just the regular environment, I really don't recommend it. You're going to pay so much money for having that enclosed holographic reticle that you're really not going to need it in a lot of situations. Now, if you're going to the desert or you're going to some really harsh conditions, absolutely, you're going to need this red dot. But the truth of it is, if you're going to those situations, you're probably going to have this issued to you because you're going to need it for your equipment. So as a civilian, I really don't recommend this reticle. I think there's some much cooler options you can do for a lot less price. Now, this thing is a cool novelty. You get a lot of Instagram clout if you use this, but otherwise, it's really heavy. I would really recommend that someone does an LPVO instead of this optic and a magnifier. So you get into this weird middle ground. So I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the Vortex UH-1 Huey. Coming up next, I want to show you some actual budget options that you can use for red dot optics and do some of the same cool things that we're doing here with the UH-1, where if you set your zero properly, you can engage targets at multiple distances. So we're going to be looking at the SIG Romeo 5, a very popular budget option that I think is going to be perfect for 90% of you out there. Alright everyone, thanks so much to those Patreon supporters. You're what makes these reviews possible, and thanks to all of you that like, comment, and subscribe. Go ahead and comment down there on everything I said wrong about the UH-1. Alright everybody, take care of yourself. Have a good one. Walsh out. Okay. That's enough of that.